Previously on the Runaway, Craig and I link up at my crib to hang out on Valentine's Day, only to find Darrell downtown drinking with a middle-aged woman he just met that day. We get into a few events. Craig and I tried to find weed. The woman gets scammed out of $200 for a fake drug. The fake drug would then splatter on my pants. We would even get pulled over by a cop for drifting on a school parking lot while the driver is under the influence and what it appears to be an illegal substance all over me. We were then let off with a warning to continue my runaway adventure. Will the lady ever get her revenge on that dealer who scammed her out of $200? Does Kid Inky try new drugs? Will Kid Inky finally lose his virginity? Find out right now on Potentially Getting Laid at a Hotel in the Middle of Nowhere. Once upon a time, I was hanging out with Craig, Darrell, and the lady. I should probably give the lady a name, huh? I guess I'll call her Anna. So we're all sitting in Anna's car in front of a pharmacy store at around 8 o'clock. We were all bored as fuck. Craig already had to be home in a few minutes. We tried to figure out what to do with Craig before we dropped him off. As we do that, Anna and Darrell goes inside the store to buy some, and Craig and I decide to talk to each other about how crazy our night was going so far. Considering that Craig, Darrell, and I have been good friends for years, I never thought that we would be in this kind of event, you know what I'm saying? It's pretty weird how things can change over a long period of time. A few minutes later, Anna and Darrell comes back with a picture frame. Don't ask. Another few minutes passed by and Craig had to be home. Anna dropped off Craig at his house and then we went back to sitting in front of a pharmacy store. Anna then asked me and Darrell if we wanted any food. Darrell and I was pretty hungry at the time, so we didn't turn down the offer. We leave to go to a drive-through bank for Anna to take out some money. As we were in line, we realized that Anna's debit card was missing. We had scrambled through the car, and once again, we couldn't find shit but a car's owner's manual. Anna started to get more upset because not only did she get scammed out of $200, but her debit card went missing. She still had money on her, but the problem was that she had $600 in all $100 bills. She didn't want to split any of the hundreds. She just wanted to get a couple of 20s from her account, since that's how much the food was going to cost. Eventually, she said forget it and drove us to the bar where we originally met up and bought Darrell and I some real spicy wings with one of the $100 bills she had. Darrell barely ate any, but I was munching on them wings. I never got to finish the wings. I'm just looking back to when I had those wings, man. I would love some rings. What about now? A few minutes later, Anna tells Darrell that she still wanted some coke and that she was willing to pay another $200 for it. Darrell calls up another one of his friends that was selling coke, apparently, and eventually a couple of people pull up to the scene. One of them told Anna that he was going to get her money back from the dealer that scammed her. Apparently him and that dealer had known each other for some time. Anna and the two that showed up went outside to do the deal while me and Darrell stayed at the table. I was still munching on them wings while Darrell kept giving me dirty looks. She bought like 24 wings too, so that's probably why I didn't finish them. And then the other two came back with a bag. After that, we all left and went on to continue the runaway adventures again. After Anna buying some alcohol and driving around searching for more weed, it got to 1 in the morning. One person had already smoked this up a little bit, but Darrell was still searching for more. Darrell was trying to find anyone who he could buy weed from. Somehow he manages to get a hold of another one of his buddies. We'll call him Rick. Rick told us to come to his house so he can get in the car and come smoke us up. So that did happen, and then we drive around for a bit. Like I said, Anna doesn't smoke weed, so she was more able to drive than the rest of us. At around 2 a.m., we ended up in downtown Minneapolis looking for a hotel. We had to park our car in the public parking lot because you're not supposed to park on the side of the road at 2 in the morning. We then walk around the city for a solid hour trying to find anywhere we could stay at. It got to around 3 in the morning and we gave up because the hotels that were nearby, you couldn't book yourself in at 2:30 in the morning. So we start walking back to the car. As we were walking, Darrell started running towards the car, even though the car wasn't that close to us. We couldn't see it. Darrell was just running up the ramps towards the car. I took the elevator while Anna and Rick just kept walking. I get into the elevator, and then I realized that I don't know what floor the car is on. So I pressed the very top floor, which is like 20 stories high. I guess it didn't come to mind that they probably didn't park at the very top of the parking lot because they weren't willing to walk all the way up the parking lot. So I go back down to the first floor and nobody was out to be found. I had lost them. So I walk around for a few minutes until Anna and Rick pulls up with the car. I got in and we drove off to find Darrell. Eventually we found him and then we encountered into a problem. As we leave the parking lot, we approached this stick blocking the way. It was attached to a machine. Basically, we had to pay in order to leave the parking lot. Anna did have money, but the problem was that she only had cash. The machine we encountered only accepted credit cards. So Anna decides to call in help service with the machine and beg them to let us through for free. She even mentions that she has kids to go back home for at 3 in the morning. Eventually, the people on the service decided to let us go. We leave Minneapolis to drive to another hotel that was closer to Anna's house. It took an hour to drive all the way there too, so you can imagine that I passed out during the ride. We got to the hotel at around 4. We booked ourselves in until Saturday. We had to sneak in the alcohol because we didn't think alcohol was allowed in the hotel. We were able to book ourselves in and I passed away. I didn't even realize I passed out too because I remember closing my eyes for a few minutes and then opening them again. I woke up at around 7 a.m. Anna and Darrell were sleeping. Rick was just chilling on a chair watching TV. I realized that I had school that day, but for some reason, I really did not want to go back to school. I was enjoying the fact that I got to stay in a hotel. So I decided not to go to school that day, and Friday, the day after, I get up and ask Rick if there's any chance we could get more weed, because I didn't want to sit in a hotel sober. It'd be boring. Rick told me he had a buddy who he could pick up from, but she usually doesn't wake up until like 10 in the morning. I sit back down to watch TV and wait 3 hours for Rick to call his dealer. He calls her, she didn't answer. She calls back within seconds. He answers. The dealer gives us a location to meet up at noon. We leave the building at around 11. We drove for about 45 minutes to the dealer. We got there. We picked up a lot of weed. And we drove another 45 minutes back to the hotel. We got back to the hotel at around 1:30 p.m. with a lot of weed and some food from Taco Bell. We were all bored, but I was the only one getting tired every few hours. I already wanted to sleep by the time we got back to the hotel. So I smoked a little, ate some Taco Bell, watched TV, and then passed out for a fat minute. So for the next few minutes of this video, I'll continue the story, but there's going to be some fat swear bombs and other very inappropriate topics. So I'm just letting y'all know if y'all down to listen to that, feel free. If not, then I highly recommend that you stop watching this video. So let's continue. At around midnight, Rick wakes me up and he's high as fuck. I noticed that the instant he started saying a bunch of weird shit to me. But he asked me if I'm down to drive to the gas station just down the highway to get some Swisher Sweets for blunt wraps. At first I wanted to stay at the hotel to go back to sleep because I was still tired for some reason. And it seemed kinda sketchy. It was curfew and I'd be driving another person's car to get wraps. And I only had a permit. But then I thought that I might as well go with him to get wraps because Rick was high as fuck and Anna was too slumped to drive. So Rick and I leave the hotel, we hop in the car, and I take off. The plan was that I drive to a gas station for Rick to legally buy Swisher Sweets. He was 19 years old. As I was driving, Rick pulls out and lights up a roach, which is basically the remainder of a blunt. He took a decent hit off the roach and he tried passing it to me, but then I passed on that because I don't want to drive under the influence. We went to look for open convenience stores because at midnight, most places are closed. Eventually, we saw a store with its lights on off the highway. I get off the highway, approach the store, and then I pass it. I just kept driving towards the end of the road. There were 3 police cars sitting, parked, right in front of the store, and it looked like there were some cops trying to buy donuts or something. I felt like this was mad sketchy because we both smelled like weed, and I didn't want them to go in there buying Swishers for blunt wraps, smelling like dope near the cops. So I turn around, head towards the highway, so we could find another open store. Rick was telling me to go back to that store where the cops was so we can get it over with. Anna's tank was also practically empty, meaning that we shouldn't drive around more to find another gas station. So I decided to go there and pull over near one of the gas pumps. Rick then casually goes in there to buy a Swisher pack and then speed walks into the car. Rick then casually goes in there to buy a Swisher pack and then speed walks towards the car. I then knew one of the cops in there suspected something because he was looking at us when Rick was walking back to the car. As Rick gets in the car, Rick tells me to get out of there. So we left and got back on the highway. I go slightly over the speed limit. We had to pop a Yui because the hotel we were staying at was on one side of the highway, meaning you couldn't get it to it from the other side. As I was trying to pop a Yui, the car slows down. I figured that every time I turned the wheel to a certain point, it would cause the car to slow down like brakes. I don't know why it was doing that. So, trying to get the car moving around during the Yui probably made me look more suspect. Luckily, we got back to the hotel before we saw a couple of cop cars go by on the highway. Thank goodness we didn't get pulled over. So we go in the hotel. Rick takes out the Swishers, empties the tobacco in a bag, stuffs the weed in the wrap. rolled and licked it for both ends of the wrap to stick together, dried the saliva out with the lighter, and we got really high that night. I then passed out on the couch again without even realizing it. On Friday morning, I wake up sober again. I still didn't want to go to school. Actually, now that I think of it, I think I didn't go to school because that would ruin my chance of getting a ride back to a place where I could stay other than my mom's. I wasn't trying to risk going back to my mom's for her to go crazy on me. Anyways, Rick notices that I wake up again. He brings me outside of the room because he wanted to talk about something really important to me. He was slurring while he was trying to talk to me, but I was still able to understand what he was trying to say. Basically, he told me that when I passed out, they kept smoking and started drinking. They then took out the second bag of quote-unquote coke Anna bought, and he figured out that they snorted crystal meth. Unfortunately, they didn't find out until afterwards. He also warned me that if they get to acting all crazy and shit, it's all because they're cross-rated as fuck. He then asked me if I wanted to try a bump. I told him that I don't do any of those drugs. I only smoke weed. He understood that, and he told me that I'm a pretty healthy person compared to most of the people he knew, and that I'll probably live long. Another thing this motherfucker wanted to talk to me about was that he was pretty, horny, and that he was trying to fuck Anna. I tell him that he's in his late teens, and him wanting to have sex with a middle-aged woman sounds just a little fucking suspect. Just a little, y'all. He was being so descriptive and explicit about how he was going to doggy style her shit and whatnot. He also tells me that he didn't care about their age difference, and that the lady was kind of horny herself too, because apparently she went on about how her sex life isn't the greatest, and how she can perform a pretty good blowjob if she tried. Rick was basically plotting on her. Shit, he was even offering to share her by running a train on her with me and Darrell. Without hesitation, I told him that I had to pass. A nigga like me ain't down for sticking his dick inside a 30-year-old stomach. I'm not a sick fuck. Kid Inky will still remain a virgin. After the suffering of hearing Rick talking about all that junk, we went back to the room. I then go outside to smoke some weed to try and forget about that entire conversation. Later in the night, some folks who sold Anna meth instead of coke had the nerves to come over. Apparently they didn't know it was meth, and they apologized about it. Speaking of scams, y'all want to know how Darrell's friends got back to $200? Okay, so they didn't. The plot twist is that the guy that sold us a bag of a fake drug died in a car accident a couple of months ago. Rest in peace, the guy I used to get weed from. Karma's a motherfucking bitch, man. Anyway, the guys that sold the meth was forgiven. All of our differences was dropped so we can have a good time. At around 4 a.m., everybody one by one started to wake up. Weird, huh? When everyone got up, we all came to the conclusion that we should all leave the hotel because we only paid to stay until Saturday, and it was pretty boring. Darrell wanted to hang out with the two folks that came through the night before. Anna and Rick wanted to go home. I was down to go to another friend's house where I could stay at. At around 6 in the morning, me, Anna, and Rick left. Rick and I smoked the last couple of blunts in the car. At around 7 a.m., Rick got to his house. Then we went back to the hotel, thinking that Darrell and his friends were still there as slump. Turns out we drove all the way there, and no one was at the hotel. There was beer cans all over the place, so the least I could do was clean up. I did that, then went back to the lady's car. The lady then goes all the way to my friend's house, which was the same direction to Rick's, so it took another hour. We got to my friend's house at around 8:30 a.m. She gave me her number, and I walked to my friend's house. She drives away to go home. The end. The moral of this story is, don't have your friends split up when walking in a parking lot. Y'all gonna get lost pretty quickly. Don't have sex with people that aren't in your age group. It's pretty weird and gross. Don't snort crystal meth either. I'm sure that's not good for you. Don't do drugs, stay in school, get good grades, and keep watching my YouTube videos. Next time on The Runaway, everybody goes home and Kid finds a family nice enough to let him stay at their home. Will Kid do any more illegal activities? Will the police find him? Will he be arrested? Will Kid go back to school? What will his friends think after Kid's absence? Find out next time on The Runaway. That should conclude part 2. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If y'all like this video, please give it a like. Subscribe to this channel if you're new to my content. Make sure to click on the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload. Follow me on Twitter at Kidaplux. Add me on Snapchat at Kidinkin. Join my Discord channel. All the links will be in the description below. Share this video to anybody who doesn't have a sex life. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace out. Sauce.